Gopijanavalabha Girivardhari Gopijanavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Nativa Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vijanavalabha Girivardhari Vijanavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Nativa Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Madhava Kunjavihari Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha. Jaya Radha Samasundara Samasundara. Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Prabhupada. Nitya Go Hare Ba, Hare Ba, Hare Ba, Hare Ba. Nitya Go Hare Ba, Hare Ba, Hare Ba, Hare Ba. Acharya Sutra Sutra Shri Divine Guest Abhachan Bhakti Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Iskan Pramacharya Divine Guest Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Yo Vishnu Param Sabri Acharya Sutra Sutra Shri Divine Guest Shri Bhakti Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Anand Puri Vaishnava Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Vidas Thakur Ki Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaura Bhakta Ki Jai Shri Shiva Hare Krishna Gopika Shyam Radha Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Kantarajman Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glory is to the simple devotees. All glory is to the simple devotees. All glory is to the simple devotees. All glory, Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glory, Shri Prabhupada Ki.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, welcome to all the devotees. Thank you for joining us for our Srimad Bhagavatam series. Just a sound check. Everyone can hear my audio. All right, if anybody's experiencing sound issues, maybe just log out and log in again. Thank you very much. So we got covering Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 3, verses 1 to 5. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. A very wonderful chapter and a very important chapter. Let us cover the Mangala Charan first. Om Jnana Timivandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sattvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishvanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavenebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Biyusha Sarva Vaideka Satpala Sarva Siddhantaratnadya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kali Dvando Didaritya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavata, O nectar churn from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you are enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees. O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varsha Sharayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer my respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you, one attains transcendental bliss, for your syllables rain pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are an incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandhu Mad Sangi Mad Guru Mahanma Mad Guru Man Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Manananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Asadu sadhu tadai natti nichota taraka hanamun chakada chinmam premna ritkatayo spura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give us saintliness to the unsaintly up, O uplift the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest in my heart, my throat, the company of pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadyasya yatonvayaritarata's charte swabhigna swarat. Tene Brahma Hidaya Dikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya. Tejo Vari Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yatrati Sargom Risha. Damna Svena Sada Nirastakuakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destructions of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him, to the material universes temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Rayanalpaisha Sabya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Patayo Manda Bhagyu Padrita. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayana Namaskritya Narachaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai pumsa paro dharmo yatho bhakti radokshajay ahitukiya pratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. The supreme occupation, dharma for all humanity, is that by which man can attain to loving devotional service under the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy himself. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatya Suvairagyam Jnanam Chat Yad Ahitukam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of God as Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Vadanti tattva vidas tattam yaj gnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth called as non-dual substance Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan. Shushrushroshradhanasya Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Syan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees are completely freed from all vice. Great service is done. By such service one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranutam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Yaradan Ridyantastoya Bhadrani Vidunati Surit Satam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues, when properly heard and chanted. Nasta Prasha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. By regular attendance in the class on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are covering Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So let us cover feedback from last week's chapter 2, verses 30 to 34. Varun was proactive, learned about the avatars, Purusha avatars, Karandadak Vishnu, Bhabadak Sai Vishnu, and Shiradak Sai Vishnu. Sham says there are 24 forms, names of Vishnu. And Mother Acharya Siddhi says, the power of knowing the Purusha avatars is that anyone who knows the three forms of Vishnu can be liberated from material entanglement. Yes, wonderful. Any other feedback? Prema Bhakti is the ultimate goal. Yes, not just Bhakti, because you can get Mishra Bhakti, you can get Jnana Mishra Bhakti, you can get Karma Mishra Bhakti, you can get different forms of Bhakti, but Prema Bhakti, Suddha Bhakti, pure Bhakti, that is the goal. Shamananda says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, what is the size of the super soul within the human body and other smaller, bigger forms? So according to scripture, the size of the super soul is, if you take the thumb to the little finger, that's the size. In some other descriptions, it's also described thumb size. So relative to the living entity, that the super soul is in that form of that species. But generally around that size, in the human body, that's the size. Krishna's pastimes are like adventures. Yes, and creation is discussed. Nalini Kanda says, Krishna is no stranger to us. He's our father. Yes, and the more we realize that Krishna is our father, then we can turn to him. Just like a child, when a child is in difficulty, the child naturally turns to the father. So when we recognize this fact that Krishna is our supreme father, then it behooves us that whenever we're in difficulty, we should turn to him. And more than when we're in difficulty, it behooves us to love him and to have a relationship with him. Nonetheless, says the first law that is presented is the cause and effect. Effect is what happens in a situation, and cause is why something happens. The whole material world has started with this law of cause and effect. When we understand this law, we will also know how to act. Yes. And when we understand this law and appreciate this law, we will not even react to a situation or cause any form of harm without understanding the consequences. We will not harm anyone physically, verbally, or even mentally, because we know the reaction is coming back. And if the reaction is coming back, that's like saying, I'm asking for trouble. So I don't want trouble, therefore act in such a way that there will be no trouble. You know, those three monkeys, blocking the eyes, see no evil, blocking your mouth, say no evil, blocking your ears, hear no evil. So don't do anything. But what we should do, we should simply glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees. Serve the devotees and the Supreme Lord. Giridhar Prabhu says, see Krishna is the cause of all causes, and Chant says, Lord Krishna comes only once in a day of Brahma. Very good. Thank you very much for that feedback. Let us continue. So we're just going to do a quick summary of 6 questions of the sages. The first question, what is the ultimate good for all of humanity, all living entities? Question 2 was, what is the essence of all scriptures? Question 3, please tell us what is the purpose of Krishna's appearance? Question 4, what are the Purusha avatars? Why did the Lord take that form of Purusha avatars? Question 5, please tell us about all the Leela avatars. And question 6, where did religion take shelter after Krishna left this world? A quick summary of chapter 1, entitled Questions by the Sages. So we heard about the absolute truth, the definition of the absolute truth. Then Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest religious scripture, highest form of religion is propounded in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and glories of Srimad Bhagavatam by Srila Vyasadeva. Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of the Vedic wisdom. Then invitation is there to study Srimad Bhagavatam. The qualities of representative of Vyasadeva is discussed. Understanding the absolute truth in Kali Yuga. then hearing about the Lord's glories, and finally adopting the process of self-realization. And within this chapter, the 6 different questions were asked. What is the ultimate good of all people? What is the essence of all scriptures? For what purpose did Krishna appear? Which adventures does the Lord perform in his incarnations, especially in relation to the creation? What are the activities of his incarnations, and to whom have religious principles gone for shelter after his departure? Then we covered chapter 2, divinity and divine service. And here we had the answers to question 1 and 2. And at the end of the chapter, answers to question 3 further will be elaborated. Question 4 further will be elaborated in chapter 3, and also the answers to question 3. And this will also be further elaborated in Canto 10. So the chapter starts off with obeisances and getting free from the material world. What is the perfection of religion? Obtaining Lord Krishna, the process and the result of devotional service, worshipping only Lord Vishnu through devotional service, and finally, introduction of the Purusha avatars, the Super Soul. So today we're starting chapter 3. Krishna is the source of incarnations. Who can tell us, looking at this picture, why do we have a candle there? Why do we have the candle? Anyone?
Krishna is the original candle. And
Yes.
For all
Very good. Krishna is the original candle, and all others are candles that are lit from this candle. Good. So Krishna is the original source of light. Krishna is the original candle. Krishna is the first candle that's lit. And from Krishna, there are many, many, many infinite number of candles, all the incarnations. And they are lit from the first candle, which is Krishna's candle. Therefore, Krishna is a source of all incarnations. So whenever we see this picture, it's going to remind us that Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. So this chapter, we're going to be covering the first 5 verses, which describes again the Purusha avatars before Sudha Goswami starts to describe the 22 incarnations, then success and benefits in hearing about the incarnations, and then Srimad Bhagavatam is a literary incarnation. So we're going to be hearing answer to question 4, then answer to question 5. Here will Lord Krishna, text 28, Lord Krishna is the fountain of all incarnations, a very, very important verse. This is the second Paribhasa Sutra of Srimad Bhagavatam. The whole of Srimad Bhagavatam is expanded from this verse. So we're going to spend some time going over this important verse, and then finally answers to question 6. So Krishna is the source of incarnation, verses 1 to 5, the Purusha avatars. First verse is going to introduce again Karanadaksai Vishnu, ingredients from whom all the ingredients of material creation come. And then verses 2 to 5, we're going to hear about Garbhadaksai Vishnu, and from him we have Brahma, who's born, the universal apprentice systems, and the source of all avatars. So I'd like to ask all of you, what is your favorite devotional activity? Name me one of your most favorite devotional activity. Reading, doing arati, singing, cooking, reading, garlands, chanting and dressing, chanting, swimming, reading book distribution, Hearing, devotional, glorification, book distribution, transcribing. Wonderful. I thought someone is going to say eating prasadam, honoring prasadam. Okay, wonderful. So we all have a special devotional activity that we enjoy, that we love. Now, what if we have multiple devotional activities, just like I love kirtan, I love hearing, I love speaking, I love serving. So I like to do multiple activities. And then besides those activities that I like, I also have to cook for my family. I may have my profession and have to work. I may, be a painter and I like to paint. I like to go swimming, and I also have to study. So if I want to perform all these activities because I derive pleasure from them, and I want to perform all the activities that you all mentioned that you like in terms of devotional service, is that possible to be done at the same time? Is it possible to be done at the same time? Sham responded, no. Any others? Not at the same time, not always. Amavati says yes. If you're doing the service of Krishna, yes. All right, so let us ask Hemavati Radhika. You can unmute. Tell us, how are you able to perform all these activities? So let's say I want to cook. At the same time, I'm a doctor, so I want to see my patients. I also want to swim. I also just want to study the Bhagavatam. I also want to read. I want to take prasad. I want to do that at the same time. How is that possible? Let us know.
Probably I was thinking like mentally you could do it.
Okay, but mentally eating prasad is not a very good idea. Okay, so yes, just like Mother Janavi said, yes, depend on your mindset. The problem is, here's an interesting fact. The mind cannot multitask. The mind cannot multitask. If you thinking you're doing two activities at the same time, it's not true. The mind can only focus on one thing at a time. So that means I will be able to, let's say if I'm cooking and I'm hearing, at one point in time, let's say if we take a second, in that second, either my focus was on the hearing, right, or on the cooking. It wasn't on both. And this way, what happens is I split my time, because it's 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. It looks like I'm doing both at the same time, but there is a distraction. I cannot do the two activities at the same time. That's why when we're chanting, we should not be doing any other activity but hearing, because the mind cannot do two things at the same time. Krishna, he's looking at every second. So he's seeing, oh, 1 second, you're looking at the TV, and another second, you're chanting. Another second there, another second there. It's like you are totally inattentive. Therefore, you do not make advancement. Okay, very important point. Therefore, you cannot, a living being, a living entity, even up to Lord Brahma, cannot perform all the activities they love to do at the same time. It is not possible for them. But it is possible for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna, he has inconceivable potencies. So Krishna also has many Krishna has unlimited desires, just like the living entity. And Krishna also wants to serve in unlimited ways and reciprocate with his devotees in unlimited ways. But Krishna has the potencies to manifest himself according to his desire in any form that he so desires. And that form can eternally exist independently of his original form. It's non-different from him, and he can enjoy through that form unlimitedly, eternally. This is Krishna. So, for example, Krishna can chastise the Kshatriyas. Krishna desired to fight, so he can appear in many forms to enjoy fighting, chivalry. Krishna wanted to exhibit ideal principles as Lord Ramachandra. Like that, so many different desires. Krishna wanted to experience Radharani's love and propagate Sankirtan, so he came as Lord Chaitanya. Krishna personally came as Krishna himself 5,000 years ago. Krishna wants to protect his devotees. He appears as Lord Nrsimhadev. And all these forms of Krishna, for his pleasure, for his pastimes, for him to relish and enjoy, are existing at the same time in one of the universes, one of the planets, and the pastimes are going on eternally, even in the spiritual world. So this is Krishna, no ordinary personality. Therefore, Prabhupada coined this term, the supreme personality of Godhead. And as Nalinikanta Prabhu said, he is our Father. We have a connection with him. We have a connection with such an amazing personality. Therefore, we should be inspired to revive, to renovate, to reconnect ourselves to this amazing personality, Krishna. Text 1. Shri Sutta Vacha Jagre Paurusham Rupam Bhagavan Mahad Adibi Sambhutam Sodasha Kalam Adoloka Shayam. Sutta said, in the beginning of the creation, the Lord first expanded himself in the universal form of the Purusha incarnations and manifested all the ingredients for the material creation. And thus, at first, there was the creation of the 16 principles of material action. This was for the purpose of creating the material universes. So here we now hearing Sutta Goswami saying that in the beginning of creation, the Lord first expanded himself in the universal form of the Purusha incarnation. So that means the Supreme Lord, Krishna, the absolute truth, existed before creation, point one. And second point, Krishna, Shyam Sundar, didn't create the creation. He didn't get involved. He didn't want to stop his pastimes in the spiritual world. But as we mentioned, he also wants to enjoy through the process of creating this material world. Therefore, he expands as the Purusha incarnations, the universal form. And the Purusha incarnation then starts to facilitate and create the material creation, the universes. So Prabhupada is going to tell us another from the second canto, 4th chapter, verse 10, purport, another important reason of why we should know the Purusha avatars. The Lord's pastimes the Lord's pastimes in the internal potency are displayed in his activities in Vrindavan, but his external potential works are described in his features of Karana Daksai Vishnu, Garbho Daksai Vishnu, and Shira Daksai Vishnu. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur offers his good counsel to the interested Vaishnavas when he says that they should not be interested in hearing only about the Lord's activities like Rasa Leela, but must be keenly interested in his pastimes, in his features of the Purusha avatars in connection with Srishti Tattva, creational functions, following the example of Maharaj Parikshit, the ideal disciple, and Sukadeva Goswami, the ideal spiritual master. So very, very important to hear about the Purusha avatars. Everything that is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam is extremely important. It has a purpose. The Bhagavatam is molding us chap at a time. It's like carving a statue. So all our sharp edges of anarthas are getting chipped away, page by page, verse by verse, canto by canto, until if we absorb what the Bhagavatam is telling us nicely, by the time we reach the 10th canto, we would have been smoothened out, polished, and shined, ready to see Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if we go through the process and we come to the 10th canto and we do not see Krishna face to face, what should we do? Please tell us. What should we do? We go through all 9 cantos. It may take 2 years. And then we come to the 10th canto and we don't see Krishna. What should we do? Yes, don't commit suicide. Repeat. Read again. Start again. Go back and start again. Right? And you can also start again, repeat with deeper prayer, with more commitment. My Lord, please, 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 I want you. And in this way, Krishna will help and reciprocate. So here Prabhupada is sharing very, very important for disciples who are keenly interested. Very important. And we will hear Prabhupada in one of the purports. Prabhupada is going to tell us also another benefit of the Purusha avatars. So the reason for the material world, the spiritual world is there to establish and enhance the various loving relationships between the Lord and all his expansions. And that's the spiritual world. That is our home. That is our true home. That's where we belong. We don't belong in this material world. We belong in the spiritual world, serving the Supreme Lord with our supreme family, spiritual family. But we find that the material world is created to correct those living entities, jivas, about their mistakes and to reestablish the relationship with the Lord. So you can see this little jiva is saying, no, thank you, I'm not interested. In one letter, Srila Prabhupada wrote, and he said, we were leaving the spiritual world. And Krishna said, why are you going? You're not going to be happy. Please don't go. And we said, no, I want to go. And Krishna said, no, but you're not going to be happy. No, I will. I know I'll be happy. Just let me go. And Krishna stopped you 3 times, and 3 times you refused Krishna's advice. And you decided, I'm going. So here we are. After billions and billions and billions of lifetimes, we are still trying to enjoy in this material world. And therefore, Krishna creates the creation first to fulfill our material desires, but ultimately so that we can learn our lesson. They say hard nut. We are little. We have a very thick skull. Unfortunately, that after so many tries, we still stubborn. We still don't want to give up. And Krishna knows that we're stubborn. And Krishna says, no problem. I'll keep at it, because while he's facilitating creation, it's his pastime. He's having adventures. He's enjoying it. At the same time, he's giving us an opportunity to learn our lesson. Krishna's plenary expansions. Prabhupada starts with the purport. The Bhagavad Gita states that the personality of God at Sri Krishna maintains these material universes by extending his plenary expansions. So this Purusha form is the confirmation of the same principle. The original personality of God at Vasudeva, or Lord Krishna, who is famous as a son of the king Vasudeva, or King Nanda, is full with all opulences, all potencies, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. Part of his opulences are manifested as impersonal Brahman, and part of his opulences are manifested as Paramatma. This Purusha feature of the same personality of God at Sri Krishna is the original Paramatma manifestation of the Lord. There are three Purusha features in the material creation, and this form, who is known as Karana Dakasai Vishnu, is the first of the three. The others are known as Garbha Dakasai Vishnu and Shira Dakasai Vishnu, which we will know one after another. The innumerable universes are generated from the skin holes of this Karana Dakasai Vishnu, and in each one of the universes, the Lord enters as Garbha Dakasai Vishnu. So here we see the Brahma Jyoti is that environment, the spiritual environment. Krishna's bodily effulgence is permeating the whole of his creation. And in one part, the Lord is lying down on the causal ocean as Karandakasai Vishnu. From his pores, universes, bubbles are coming out, and the Lord is going to create the material ingredients. So just a quick summary. We covered, last week, we shared about Mahavishnu, and we will touch on other aspects. And this aspect of creation will be covered in many chapters, different cantos, different perspective. So here in this specific verse, it's mentioned that Mahavishnu, Karandakasai Vishnu, he creates or the 16 elements that's there. Now, in some verses, there'll be different numbers depending on the grouping. Here, we're going to be covering those 16 elements that are created. So Mahavishnu, he is the first of the Purusha avatars, and from his glance, Shambhu is manifested, who is an expansion of Sadashiva. In his glance also, there's the jivas, there's karma, and there's time. And this comes in contact with Mahatattva in the form of Maya Devi and activates her, triggers her. So therefore, with Shambhu and Parvati, this material creation is now put into motion. But they're not independent. They are dependent on Mahavishnu's desire, okay, his glance. It is also mentioned that from one part of one side of Mahavishnu, Shiradaksai Vishnu, Super Soul Vishnu is expanded, and from another side of Mahavishnu, Brahma is expanded, and this Brahma is not the same Brahma that is within the universe. This is Hiranyagarbha. This is a prototype Brahma, or it's also the Virat Rupa. Just like when when they're manufacturing a car, they build a prototype that will then be the sample of the original cars that's going to come out. So Mahavishnu creates a prototype, and this prototype universal form called Virat Rupa or Hiranyagarbha has like the blueprint, everything that Lord Brahma is going to require for secondary creation, dimensions, characteristics, features, sizes, everything required, different laws, whatever is required for creation is in this Hiranyagarbha, Virat Rupa blueprint. Okay, we'll speak a little more about that. And then Rama Devi, expansion of Lakshmi Devi of Shrimati Radhavani, is also there serving Mahavishnu. Wherever Lord Vishnu is, the consort eternal consorts are always there. Wherever Krishna is, Srimati Radharani is. Wherever Lord Ramachandra is, Sita Devi is. Wherever Lord Vishnu is or Narayan is, Lakshmi Devi is there. They never separated. They are eternal. Ramadevi is the eternal consort of the Lord. And here the Lord is in what we call Yoga Nidra, in a slumber form. It's divine sleep. Okay? And in his divine sleep is actually a pastime that the Lord is manifesting. And he's engaged in different pastimes, even in this transcendental slumber. Prabhupada then continues in the purport, the only enjoyer. In Bhagavad Gita, it is also mentioned that the material world is created at certain intervals and then again destroyed. This creation and destruction is done by the Supreme Will because of the conditioned souls or the Nitya Baddha living beings. The Nitya Baddha or eternally conditioned souls have the sense of individuality or ahankar, which dictates them sense enjoyment, which they are unable to have constitutionally. I will read that statement again. The Nitya Baddha or the eternally conditioned souls have the senses of individuality, or ahankar, which dictates them sense enjoyment, which they are unable to have constitutionally. So Prabhupada is making very clear here first that we are Nitya Baddha, which means we are eternally conditioned, meaning that we have been here for practically eternality, long time. Remember, I was referring to our stubbornness. So this is how stubborn we are. Now, Prabhupada also makes it very clear that constitutionally we are not designed, we are not created to enjoy. Prabhupada then continues, the Lord is the only enjoyer and all others are enjoyed. The living beings are predominated enjoyers, but the eternally conditioned souls, forgetful of this constitutional position, have the strong aspirations to enjoy. The chance to enjoy matter is given to the conditioned souls in the material world, and side by side they are given the chance to understand their real constitutional position. So now you know why you are continuously bound in this material world, because you don't want to learn the fact that constitutionally you are meant to be enjoyed and not the enjoyer. There is only one enjoyer, and that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Yes, through service, through giving enjoyment to the Supreme Lord and his devotees, we enjoy. So it's not that we don't enjoy. We do enjoy. But we enjoy by giving pleasure to the Supreme Lord as the enjoyed. So constitutionally we are enjoyed, and when we are enjoyed by the Supreme Lord, that's when we enjoy, not separately. We cannot directly enjoy. Prabhupada gives the example of this hand. The hand cannot eat a mango. If the hand says, okay, now I'm going to eat a mango, I don't want to feed it to the stomach. I'm independent. What do they call it now? You may say, independence, I have my own rights. I'm going to vote and boycott. I'm not going to feed the stomach. If the hands and the limbs go on strike like that, they will suffer and they will become weaker. The hands enjoy when they give pleasure to the stomach. They must feed the mouth and feed the stomach, and that way the mango broken down will then go to all parts of the body. So this is how we constitutionally designed. The chance to enjoy matter is given to the conditioned souls in this material world. Because we are stubborn, because we want to enjoy, then Krishna says, okay, yeah, go ahead. There's your playground. One time, Srila Prabhupada was going past a zoo, and they had the zoo had a signboard, children's playground, children's fairyland. So Prabhupada and the devotees were there and they read children's fairyland. And then Prabhupada turned around and he pointed to all the big skyscrapers. And Prabhupada said, adults fairyland. So this is our fairyland. This is our playground to try to enjoy separately from Krishna. And the outcome is frustration, because constitutionally, you are not meant to enjoy. So you're not designed for that. It will not work. The chance to enjoy matter is given to the conditioned souls until side by side, they are given the chance to understand their real constitutional position. Those fortunate living entities who catch the truth. So I hope we are all catching the truth and surrender unto the lotus feet of Vasudeva after many, many births in this material world, join the eternally liberated souls and thus are allowed to enter into the kingdom of God. After this, such fortunate living entities need not come again within the occasional material creation, but those who cannot catch the constitutional truth are again merged into the Mahatattva at the time of annihilation of the material creation. So Prabhupada would often say that Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple and complicated for the complicated. Krishna is very simple. Just accept that you are constitutionally not designed for enjoying, but to give enjoyment to Krishna. You are a servant and you enjoy by being a servant, not otherwise. Prabhupada in a lecture in Ahmedabad says, similarly, Prakriti, this is an example. Here, either man or woman, everyone is Prakriti. The real Purusha is Krishna. In Sanskrit, Purusha means enjoyer, and Prakriti means enjoyed. And there is a nice example. When Rupa Goswami was there in Vrindavan in his bhajan, Mirabai went to see him. And Rupa Goswami's message was that he does not want to see any woman. They were very strict. At least the story is like. So Mira challenged that I came to Vrindavan. I know that only Krishna is Purusha here and everyone is woman. So how does it mean that Rupa Goswami is declined to see another woman? So Rupa Goswami agreed. Yes, I'm mistaken. Yes, Krishna is the only Purusha. So Purusha means enjoyer and Prakriti means the instrument of enjoyment. Prakriti, energy. Just like here we see one man is very big, rich man, but he's enjoyer by utilizing his energy. Similarly, the whole cosmic situation, whole creation is the supreme enjoyer is God. So the whole material creation, everything, every facet and every part of Krishna's unlimited creation, which includes you, which includes your body, which includes your mind, which includes your senses, it includes everything, is simply meant for Krishna's pleasure. And the most amazing thing is when you give pleasure to Krishna, you will experience unlimitedly more pleasure than you will find in the material world. So that's the irony, that even if you do find some flickering happiness in this material world, it does not compare to the pleasure you can actually get by giving pleasure to Krishna. And still, the living entities will not heed. Conditioned souls will not heed, unfortunately. There's a wonderful example. You see a belt here. So there was a maidservant, and she was serving in one very wealthy man's house, and cleaning, doing all the standard activities that a maidservant does. And one day, the owner went to work, and the maidservant was busy cleaning. The master went to work and the maidservant was busy cleaning, and she was a little exhausted, and she happened to go into his room. And because she was exhausted, she looked at the bed and she touched the bed, with her hands, nice and soft. Maybe I should, just a few minutes, test it out. I'm tired. Let me test it out. So she sat on the bed, nice and soft. One of those Posturepedic, high-class, wealthy mattresses for a wealthy man. So she thought, very nice, very comfortable, and then she lied down. Wow, this is excellent. And she laid down, and before she knew it, out for the count, she was gone, fast asleep. Evening came. The master came in, wondering, where's the maid? Where's the maidservant? Call her name. Nobody responding. Interesting. Where is she? Anyway, walked up to his room, and as soon as he came into the room, he was shocked. Who's sleeping on my bed? He was furious. He went to the bed, grabbed her. She got a shock. Bas. She didn't know what happened. And he got hold of it, took his belt out. He was so furious that somebody could sleep on his bed, and he started giving a few with his belt. And she started crying, Bas, sorry. And he was beating her with the belt. How dare you sleep on my bed? And after a few minutes of getting some lashes with the belt, she started to laugh. And she was getting, beaten, and she was laughing, and she was laughing even more. And then he stopped. Why are you laughing? And she said, Bas, I was just thinking. I slept on the bed for a few hours, and I got such a beating. And then I was thinking, just imagine what you're going to get if you're sleeping every day on this bed. So, moral of the story is we are enjoying Krishna's property. And if we are enjoying Krishna's property, then we are liable for punishment. Let us catch the truth, as Prabhupada is saying. Let us understand this simple fact. I am part and parcel of Krishna. The part is meant to serve the whole. A part of a machine is not independent. It is meant to be cooperating with the whole machine, and then it has value. The finger has value when it's connected to the hand. Similarly, we, as servants of Krishna, should be connected to Krishna. Then our life will be blissful and sublime. Now, the 16 elements, Prabhupada continues in the purport. When the creation is again set up, this Mahatattva is again let loose. This Mahatattva contains all the ingredients of material manifestations, including the conditioned souls. Primarily, this Mahatattva is divided into 16 parts, namely the 5 gross material elements. So here you see the 5 gross material elements called Panchabhuta, and the 11 working instruments or senses. So we got the Jitendriya, and we got the Kamendriya, working senses, and knowledge acquiring senses, Gyanendriya. So 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Knowledge acquiring senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. And then the working senses: hand, legs, voice, anus, and genitals. 5, 10, 15. And then the mind, which is the 6th sense. So these are 16 elements. It is like the cloud in the clear sky. In the spiritual sky, the effulgence of Brahman is spread all around, and the whole system is dazzling in spiritual light. Mahatattva is assembled in some corner of the vast, unlimited spiritual sky. And The part which is thus covered by Mahatattva is called the material sky. This part of the spiritual sky is called the Mahatattva, is only an insignificant portion of the whole spiritual sky. And within this Mahatattva are the innumerable universes. All these universes are collectively produced by the Karanadaksai Vishnu, called also Mahavishnu, who simply throws his glance to impregnate the material sky. So for Krishna to create the creation is no big deal. He just glances and everything happens. It's not like in the Bible it says, Krishna created and God created and then he had to rest. No, Krishna doesn't need to rest. He doesn't get tired creating. He's got unlimited, inconceivable potencies. So he doesn't need to rest. Right? In fact, he's enjoying this creative process, and it's very easy for him, completely easy for him to create. All he has to do is glance. So we have the gross elements, we have the subtle elements, which are there, which will then be created. We'll cover different verses that will explain how all these elements are created. It's very detailed. Scripture gives such great amount of detail in terms of how things are created, very systematically. And the essence of this understanding is that this is all Krishna's creation, Krishna's doing. There is someone behind the creation. It's not happening on its own. There's also the causal body. So here we find Lord Mahavishnu. He is the Karanadaksai Vishnu. Karana means the cause. So he's the initial cause in terms of creation. We also have a causal body. So we have a gross body made of these elements. We have a subtle body made of these elements called the Linga Sharir or Shushma Sharir. And then there's a Karana Sharir, causal body, which is our impressions or desires or karma, or vidya, ignorance, vasana, desire. So this is three. We also have three bodies. And similarly, you'll see Mahavishnu, Karanadaksai Vishnu, Garbhadaksai Vishnu, they also involve in these different aspects. Text 2. Yasyambasi sayanasya yoga nidram vitanvata nabhiradambu jad asid brahma vishwa shrijampati. A part of the Purusha lies down within the water of the universe. From the navel lake of his body sprouts a lotus stem. And from the lotus flower atop this stem, Brahma, the master of all engineers in the universe, becomes manifest. So Prabhupada starts off the purport and says, the first Purusha is Karanadaksai Vishnu. From his skin holes, innumerable universes have sprung up. In each and every universe, the Purusha enters as Garbhadaksai Vishnu. He is lying within the half of the universe, which is full with water of his body. And from the navel of Garbhadaksai Vishnu has sprung the stem of the lotus flower, the birthplace of Brahma, who is the father of all living beings and the master of all the demigods, engineers engaged in the perfect design and working of the universal order. Within the stem of the lotus, there are 14 divisions of planetary systems, and the earthly planets are situated in the middle. Upwards, there are other better planetary systems. The topmost system is called Brahmaloka or Satyaloka. Downwards from the earthly planets system, there are 7 lower planetary systems inhabited by the Suras and similar other materialistic living beings. From Garbhadaksai Vishnu, there is an expansion of Kshiradaksai Vishnu, who is the collector Paramatma of the living beings. He is called Hari, and from him, all incarnations within the universe are expanded. So here we are hearing about Karanadaksai Vishnu, who expands in each of the universes as Garbhodaksai Vishnu lying on Sesanag, on the serpent bed, Anantashesh, with Lakshmi Devi massaging his lotus feet. And then there's a lotus, lotus stem that comes out, and Lord Brahma is born on the top. So when Mahavishnu glances at Mahatattva, he also impregnates all the living entities that were in his body due to the past or the previous annihilation. When there's annihilation, all the living entities now go back into Mahavishnu's body. Then he creates again, and he impregnates all those living entities in Mahatattva. The pradhan becomes Mahatattva, the pradhan, the ingredients become active, becomes activated. So now material energy is now in motion, it's activated. And with the potencies of the Supreme Lord. Then, as the empty shells of universes are manifesting from the Lord's pores, Durga, material energy, starts to now facilitate and create the different coverings around the universe, or those empty shells. There's different earth, water, fire, air, ether, all the elements are as walls of the universe, each one 10 times bigger. The next one is 10 times bigger than the previous one. So it's a very thick wall. For example, earth is a certain diameter. Then water is 10 times thicker. Earth, water, fire, 10 times thicker than water, etc. This way all the elements are there covering the universe like a prison wall. And the Lord Karandaksai Vishnu expands in that universe as Garbhodaksai Vishnu. When he expands as Garbhodaksai Vishnu, he also then brings with him into his body all the living entities for that specific universe. So this is all arranged by the inconceivable potencies of the Lord. So every universe will then have those allocated living entities who are meant to populate that universe. And then the desires of the living entities come in the form of the lotus or the stem. And within the stem, so here, naturally, from a picture perspective, it's very difficult to draw this. But this lotus stem is not as thin as the picture shows. All the 14 planetary systems are within this lotus stem. And Lord Brahma is born. He is the most pious living being within this body of Garbhodaksai Vishnu, and he is given the opportunity to represent the post of Brahma and to be the secondary creator. So then he would start the secondary creation. And his planet, Brahmaloka, is the topmost planet called Satyaloka. So this just looks like a lotus, but it's a full planet. It's a opulent planet with all faculties and facilities. It's a very opulent planet. And then there's obviously the other planets, heavenly planets. In the middle is earthly planet, and then there's the lower planets. So the planets are actually situated within the lotus stem, and therefore we can get an idea that this lotus stem is vast. It's huge. And then Prabhupada also explains about all the incarnations that the Garbhodaksai Vishnu, and then Prabhupada also mentioned the Kshirodaksai Vishnu, all the other incarnations come from them. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Purusha avatar is manifested in three features. The first, the Karandaksai Vishnu, who creates aggregate material ingredients in the Mahatattva. The second, Garbhodaksai Vishnu, who enters in each and every universe. And the third, Kshirodaksai Vishnu, who is Paramatma of every material object, organic or inorganic. So every atom, molecule, object, whether it's organic or inorganic, has the super soul in it. One who knows these planetary features of the personality of Godhead knows Godhead properly, and thus the knower becomes freed from the material conditions of birth, death, old age, and disease, as it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. So here's another reason, another benefit of knowing these three Purusha incarnations, these plenary features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, that we can become free from birth, death, disease, and old age. In this sloka, the subject matter of Mahavishnu is summarized. The Mahavishnu lies down in some part of the spiritual sky by his own free will. Thus, he lies on the ocean of Karana, from where he glances over his material nature. Note his material nature. And Mahatattva is at once created. If it's his material nature, then it is understood that it is for his pleasure and not for our pleasure. So we are enjoying someone else's property, enjoying the Supreme Lord's property. Therefore, we are being punished. The Mahavishnu lies down in some part of the spiritual sky by his own free will. Thus, he lies on the ocean of Karana, from where he glances over his material nature, and Mahatattva is at once created. Thus, electrified by the power of the Lord, material nature at once creates innumerable universes, just as in due course a tree decorates itself with innumerable grown fruits. The seeds of the tree is sown by the cultivator, and the tree and the creeper in due course become manifest with so many fruits. Nothing can take place without a cause. The Karana ocean is therefore called the causal ocean. Karana means causal. We should not foolishly accept the atheistic theory of creation. The description of the atheist is given in Bhagavad Gita. The atheist does not believe in the creator, but he cannot give a good theory to explain the creation. Material nature has no power to create without the power of the Purusha, just as Prakriti or woman cannot produce a child without the connection of a Purusha or man. The Purusha impregnates and the Prakriti delivers. We should not expect milk from the fleshy bags of a neck of a goat, although they look like breastly nipples. Similarly, we should not expect any creative power from the material ingredients. We must believe in the power of the Purusha, who impregnates Prakriti or nature. Because the Lord wished to lie down in meditation, the material energy created innumerable universes at once. In each of them, the Lord lay down, and thus all the planets and the different paraphernalia were created at once by the will of the Lord. The Lord has unlimited potencies, and thus he can act as he likes by perfect planning, although personally he has nothing to do. No one is greater than or equal to him. That is the verdict of the Vedas. We can also appreciate Krishna's creativity. Krishna is very creative. He could have created creation in so many ways, but this is how Krishna decided to manifest creation. Very, very amazing, very powerful. Text 3. Yasya vayava samstane kalpito lokavishtara tadvai bhagavato rupam vishuddham sattvam urjitam. It is believed that all the universal planetary systems are situated on the extensive body of the Purusha, but he has nothing to do with the created material ingredients. His body is eternally in spiritual existence par excellence. So now we're going to be hearing about the Virat Rupa, the universal form. And the Virat Rupa will also be many, many times discussed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in different parts of the Bhagavatam. The conception of the Virat Rupa or Vishwa Rupa of the Supreme Absolute Truth is especially meant for the neophytes who can hardly think of the transcendental form of the personality of Godhead. To him, a form means something of this material world, and therefore an opposite conception of the Absolute is necessary in the beginning to concentrate the mind on the power extension of the Lord. As stated above, the Lord extends his potency in the form of the Mahatattva, which includes all the material ingredients. The extension of the power by the Lord and the Lord himself personally are one in one sense. but at the same time, the Mahatattva is different from the Lord. Therefore, the potency of the Lord and the Lord are simultaneously different and non-different. Conception of the Virat Rupa, especially for the impersonalists, is thus non-different from the eternal form of the Lord. This eternal form of the Lord exists prior to the creation of the Mahatattva. And it is stressed here that the eternal form of the Lord is par excellence spiritual or transcendental to the modes of material nature. This, the very same transcendental form of the Lord is manifested by his eternal potency and the formation of his multifarious manifestations of incarnations is always of the same transcendental quality without any touch of the Mahatattva. So this principle of one and difference has to be understood. The energy and the energetic are one and different. Just like the sun and the sun rays. You cannot separate them, and they're one and different. The sun rays also have heat and light. But at the same time, the sun rays is not the sun. Similarly, the Lord, when it's because he's here, because of his potencies, which create the material ingredients, therefore they are non-different from him. They are connected to him and they are non-different. At the same time, the material ingredients are different from the Supreme Lord because the Supreme Lord is spiritual. And the material ingredients is made of apara prakriti, material, not the superior energy. It's made of the inferior energy, Durga. Now, the universal form, as we explained, the manifestation of the Hiranyagarbha, that is there for a purpose, as we mentioned, the prototype to make sure that Brahma has all the information he requires for creation. And there's also another reason which is explained here, right in the beginning of the purport. Prabhupada says the universal form, this Virat Rupa, is also meant for neophytes who can hardly think of the transcendental form of the Lord. So people that find it very difficult to conceive of God having a spiritual form, for them, we find that this aspect of Virat Rupa is very clearly given, and therefore it is for their benefit. Now we find many people take advantage of this Virat Rupa, and Prabhupada continues. He says, persons who are unable to pin their faith on the personal feature of the Absolute are given a chance to associate with his Virat Rupa, or the cosmic impersonal feature of the Lord. Those who want to see the Lord with their present material eyes or with the material senses are advised to meditate on the gigantic external feature called the Virat Rupa. One should hear of the universal position of the Virat form of the Lord as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. That will help one save himself from the material conditioned life and gradually elevate him on the path of liberation so that he can go back to Godhead. One is advised hereward to meditate upon the Virat Rupas specified in the previous chapters in order to understand how different planets, seas, mountains, rivers, birds, bees, human beings, demigods, and all that we can conceive are but different parts and limbs of the Lord's Virat form. This sort of thinking is also a type of meditation on the absolute truth. And as soon as such meditation begins, one develops one's godly qualities and the whole world appears to be a happy and peaceful residence for all the people of the world. Without such meditation on God, either personal or impersonal, all good qualities of human beings become covered with misconception regarding his constitutional position. And without such advanced knowledge, the whole world becomes a hell for human beings. So the Virat Rupa, which will be described in the further chapters of the Bhagavatam, different parts of the Lord's form, just like the two eyes, the sun and the moon, etc., different form. And it's the whole material creation is put together into this form called a Virat Rupa. And those who cannot access or cannot even conceive of a spiritual form, they are welcomed, requested to focus on the Virat Rupa. There will be another slide that I'll explain a little more on that, because the next few verses will also be speaking about the Virat Rupa. Pashyantado rupam adabrak chakshusha shahasra padaro bhujananan bhut shashrashob padaru bhujananan bhutam Sahasramurdha Shravanakshi Nashikam Sahasramolya Abara Kundalo Lasat. The devotees, with their perfect eyes, see the transcendental form of the Purusha, who has thousands of legs, thighs, arms, and faces, all extraordinary. In that body, there are thousands of heads, ears, eyes, and noses. They are decorated with thousands of helmets and glowing earrings, and adorned with garlands. Prabhupada says in the purport, with our present materialized senses, we cannot perceive anything of the transcendental Lord. Our present senses are to be rectified by the process of devotional service. And then the Lord himself becomes revealed to us. In Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that the transcendental Lord can be perceived only by pure devotional service. So it is confirmed in the Vedas that only devotional service can lead one to the side of the Lord, and that only devotional service can reveal him. In the Brahma Samhita also it is said that the Lord is always visible to the devotees whose eyes have been anointed with a tinge of devotional service. So we have to take information of the transcendental of the Lord from the persons who have actually seen him with perfect eyes smeared with devotional service. In the material world also, we do not always see things with our own eyes. We sometimes see through the experience of those who have actually seen or done things. If that is the process of experiencing a mundane object, it is more perfectly applicable in the matter of matters of transcendental. So only with patience and perseverance can we realize the transcendental subject matter regarding the absolute truth and its different forms. He is formless to the neophytes, but he is in transcendental form to the expert servitors. So Prabhupada's giving a very wonderful purport here. That first, our present senses are to be rectified by the process of devotional service. So we need to become attached to the process of devotional service, because it is only by devotional service, Bhakti Mama Bijanati, Krishna says, only by devotional service can I be understood. Only through devotional service can we see Krishna. Not by our own mundane senses, not by our own effort. So Krishna will reveal himself to the degree that we please him through our devotional service. So becoming attached to devotional practices is extremely important for sadhakas. And Prabhupada is encouraging us that therefore we need the patience and perseverance. And why do we need the patience and perseverance? Is because it is not dependent on us. It is dependent on the sweet will of Krishna. If Krishna so desire, he will reveal himself. But what will make Krishna desire if we don't act in devotional service? So therefore, if we please Krishna, he'll most likely be pleased with us and therefore reveal himself. And for that, we need to persevere on this path of devotional service. Then Prabhupada is also making a point that is also very, very important in terms of the transcendental form of the Lord. Krishna has a transcendental form. Now, many statements in the Vedas, they say that God has no form. And when people do not understand these statements from those who are experienced, as Prabhupada is mentioning, then they get the wrong end of the stick of the understanding. When scripture says God is Nirakar, Nirgun, he does not have a form, it's implying that God does not have a material form. God does not have material senses. God does not have material qualities. But he does have a spiritual form. He does have spiritual qualities. And therefore, Prabhupada is recommending that we understand spiritual aspects through those who are experienced. We are fortunate to have Srila Prabhupada and many great souls that are experienced. In our line of disciplic succession, we have many acharyas that are experienced in the science of pure devotional service and understanding and seeing Krishna. Therefore, we have to see through them. Just like the Bhagavatam, which is given by Srila Vyasadeva, it's Vyasadev's words, and therefore we are seeing through Vyasadeva, we are seeing through the Bhagavatam. And this is the proper way. If somebody travels to India and you now want to go to India, you can speak to that person who's gone to India and visited, and you can get some advice. You can understand a little about India from his experience. So that is how we also are able to see Krishna through the experience of others. One time, many times, Srila Prabhupada in the lecture, people would ask him this question, did you see God? So one time, one lady, after the class, Prabhupada, thanked everyone and asked if there's any questions. So this Indian lady picked up a hand, and she was a little challenging. She said, do you see God? So Prabhupada, he said, God is everywhere. Don't you see? So she got a little stumped. And she says, no, I don't see. And Prabhupada says, but God is everywhere. So you should be able to see. Do you want to see God? And then she said, no. So then Prabhupada said, well, that's why you can't see. Another time, one gentleman asked Srila Prabhupada, have you seen God? So Prabhupada said, if I tell you yes, what difference going to make? Another time someone said, he was humble. He asked Swamiji, are you seeing God? Then Prabhupada said, if I give you an answer, will you believe me? And the devotee said yes. So then Prabhupada said yes. And then another time, Prabhupada was speaking to Hridayananda Maharaj, and Hridayananda Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada, have you seen Krishna? And Prabhupada said yes, from the age of 4. And another time, Prabhupada told him, there was never a time when I'm separated from Krishna. I'm always seeing Krishna. I'm always with Krishna. And another time, Srila Prabhupada was sitting in a room and he was chanting, and Sudama came into the room, and all of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada started to cry. Torrents of tears were coming from his eyes. And when Sudama saw Prabhupada like that, he started crying. And then he asked Srila Prabhupada why he was crying. And Srila Prabhupada says, because I was just seeing Krishna it was like a patio door, and outside in the garden, Prabhupada said, I was just seeing Krishna, he was just outside. And therefore he was crying. And then Prabhupada asked Sudama, why are you crying? And Sudama says, Prabhupada, because I see you crying. So we, and we also know, even before Prabhupada went to America, during Janmashtami, Srila Prabhupada was, when he had his first disciple in Jhansi, Prabhakar, he went, Acharya Prabhakar, he actually went to Delhi for business. And he was Prabhupada's first disciple, and Prabhupada was celebrating Janmashtami. and Prabhupada was having kirtan in the temple alone with his mridanga and practically singing in ecstasy. And Acharya Prabhupada came back from Delhi, and he noticed, he came into the temple room, and he smelt this very beautiful scent. And he saw Prabhupada had this beautiful, huge Kadamba flower garland. And he saw Prabhupada was in ecstasy. So then later, in next day, during breakfast, he asked Srila Prabhupada where he got the garland from. And Prabhupada explained that he was chanting, and Krishna appeared to him and gave him the garland. So in many instances, we can see that Srila Prabhupada, no doubt, was in contact with Krishna. We know even Srila Prabhupada was speaking to the deities. Every temple Srila Prabhupada would go, he would be speaking, reciprocating with the deities. And we should be seeing Krishna through the experience of Srila Prabhupada. And this is how we can establish and strengthen our faith in the fact that Krishna has a form and Krishna is a person. So the Virat Rupa is Krishna's mercy. As Prabhupada is explaining, and the Bhagavatam will also share further, that those people who are neophyte, and they cannot relate to God's spiritual form. So they look at nature and they contemplate on nature. Like they focus on the sun, they glorify the sun, the power of the sun, or on scenery, on flowers, mountains, different animals. People focus, people meditate on these aspects, right? The power, the potency, the grandeur. And that is Virat Rupa meditation. We should encourage it, but at the same time, when we meet people like this, we can encourage them that they should continue, and we give them a higher understanding as well through Prabhupada's books. So in this way, we don't condemn this type of meditation. It is an authorized form of meditation, but we need to help those to rise above. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that with a spark of my splendor, I pervade this entire creation. So if the spark is so beautiful, just consider the inferno, the source. How wonderful, how beautiful. So gradually, as people meditate on the different features of creation, understanding that these aspects of creation are part of God's form, material form, the Virat Rupa, which comes from a spiritual source, Mahavishnu, who comes expanded from Krishna. In this way, their understanding gets elevated. Last verse for today, text 5. Etananavataranam nidanam bijam avyayam yasyam samshena shrijyante devatiryannaradaya. This form, the second manifestation of Purusha, is the source and indestructible seed of multifarious incarnations within the universe. From the particles and portions of this form, different living entities like demigods, men, and others are created. So this Garbhodakasai Vishnu, or the interchangeable, even Kshirodakasai Vishnu, they are the seed, indestructible seed for all the different multifarious incarnations. All other incarnations and all other manifestations like demigods, men, all come from these Purusha avatars. Source of all incarnations, Prabhupada starts off the purport. The Purusha, after creating innumerable universes in the Mahatattva, entered in each of them as the second Purusha, Garbhodakasai Vishnu. Then he saw that within the universe, there was only darkness and darkness and space, without a resting place. He filled half the universe with water from his own perspiration and laid himself down on the same water. This water is called Garbhodaka. Then from his navel, the stem of the lotus flower sprouted, and on the flower petals, the birth of Brahma, or master engineer of the universal plan took place. Brahma became the engineer of the universe, and the Lord himself took charge of the maintenance of the universe as Vishnu. Brahma was generated from Rajagun of Prakriti, or the mode of passion in nature, and Vishnu became the Lord of the mode of goodness. Vishnu, being transcendental to all modes, is always aloof from materialistic affection. This has already been explained. From Brahma there is Rudra, Shiva, who is in charge of the mode of ignorance or darkness. He destroys the whole creation by the will of the Lord. Therefore, all three, namely Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, are incarnations of Garbhodaksai Vishnu. Now, this Shiva, when Mahavishnu glances, that glance is in the form of Shambhu, who is an expansion of Sadashiva in the spiritual world. Shambhu then comes in contact with Durga, and there is creation. That's triggered. When Brahma is now born on the lotus, Brahma then asks the four Kumaras, who are first created, we're going to hear about them next week, to populate. They refuse to populate. When they refuse to populate, then from the middle of the forehead, between the eyebrows of Brahma, Rudra is born. Okay, so this is how the Lord manifests, especially Lord Shiva, appears in creation through these different mediums, through these different personalities. From Brahma, the other demigods like Daksha, Marichi, Manu, and many others becomes incarnated to generate living entities within the universe. Thus, Garbhodaksai Vishnu is glorified in the Vedas in the hymns of the Garbha Stuti, which begin with the description of the Lord as having thousands of heads, etc. Garbhodaksai Vishnu is the Lord of the universe, and although he appears to be lying within the universe, he is always transcendental. This also has already been explained. The Vishnu, who is the plenary portion of the Garbhodaksai Vishnu, is the supersoul of the universal life, and he is known as the maintainer of the universe, or Shiradaksai Vishnu. So the three features of the original Purusha are thus understood, and all the incarnations within the universe are emanations from this Shiradaksai Vishnu. This picture just shows, here's the universe, and you can see earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, false ego, mind. This is the layer of the universe. Each one is 10 times bigger. So water is 10 times bigger than earth, 10 times bigger, 10 times bigger. In this way, you can understand that it's impossible to penetrate, to escape out of this prison house. Very, very difficult. Only through the process of devotional service, Krishna consciousness, can we come out of the prison house. Different incarnations. In the different millenniums, there are different incarnations, and they are innumerable, although some of them are very prominent, such as Matsya, Kurma, Vara, Rama, Nishinga, Vamana, and many others. These incarnations are called Lila incarnations. Then there are qualitative incarnations, such as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, or Rudra, who take charge of the different modes of material nature. Lord Vishnu is non-different from personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva is in the marginal position between the personality of Godhead and the living entities, or jivas. Brahma is always a jiva tattva. The highest pious living being, or the greatest devotee of the Lord, is empowered with the potency of the Lord for creation, and he is called Brahma. Thus, his power is like the power of the sun reflected in valuable stones and jewels. When there is no such living being to take charge of the post of Brahma, the Lord himself becomes Brahma and takes charge of the post. So when Garbhodaksai Vishnu is lying there, then within his body, all the living entities are there for that specific universe. And the living entity that is the greatest devotee, or that has the greatest piety. For example, somebody may do 100 Ashwamedha sacrifices. He gets, a lot of piety, and in his next life he can become Brahma. So that living entity will shoot up through the stem and be born on the lotus. as Brahma. Now, sometimes they may not be a qualified pious soul. Therefore, the Lord himself will expand as Brahma and take that post as Brahma for that specific duration during that kalpa. It's described that every one of us, when we fell from the spiritual world, our first post was that of Brahma. So every single one of us had the opportunity to serve as Lord Brahma. Life of Brahma, the duration. Prabhupada talks about that. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living being. He is the plenary portion of the Lord, but because Lord Shiva is in direct touch with the material nature, he is not exactly in the same transcendental position as Lord Vishnu. The difference is like that between milk and curd. Curd is nothing but milk, and yet it cannot be used in place of milk. So this is Lord Shiva's position. He's Shiva Tattva. He's in his separate own category. He's not a Jiva at all. He is God that is not God. He is God in the sense that he's milk, but because he has come in contact with Durga, the material energy, therefore that curdling agent is there, and he falls in his category of Shiva. Just like you cannot use milk. If milk comes in contact with a curdling substance, with like a tamarind, a curdling agent, then it cannot be used anymore as milk. It becomes yogurt, it becomes curd. So that's the position of Lord Shiva. The next incarnations are the Manus. Within 1 day's duration of the life of Brahma, which is calculated by our solar years as 4,300,000 years times 1,000 years, there are 14 Manus. Therefore, there are 420 Manus in 1 month of Brahma and 5,040 Manus in 1 year of Brahma. Brahma lives for 100 years of this age, and therefore there are 5,040 times 100, which is 504,000 Manus in the duration of Brahma's life. There are innumerable universes with one Brahma in each of them, and all of them are created and annihilated during the breathing time of Purusha. Therefore, one can simply imagine how many millions of Manus there are during one breath of the Purusha. So there's unlimited universes, unlimited Brahmas. In each universe, there are 504,000 Manus. So it's inconceivable how many living entities are there. And all these living entities, all these expansions and expansions of expansions, they are all dependent on the Supreme Lord. And the Lord knows the karmic reaction, the desires of every living entity, and is facilitating their desires. So here's a chart that shows just a breakdown of 1 day of Brahma. So in 1 day of Brahma, there's 14 Manus. Before the day of Brahma is a night of Brahma. Then there is what they call a junction or Sandhya. It's like before, from one night, like dusk, you could say, from night, the juncture from one night to day, there's a transition period. And there's partial creation. And then there's the 14 Manus that comes during that time. So 4.3 billion years is the day of Brahma, and the same is the night. And 1 day of Brahma is 1,000 cycles of Satya Yuga, Tetra Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. This is 1 Divya Yuga, and Brahma's day is 1,000 of these cycles. 1,000 of these give you 1 day, 1,000 of these give you 1 night. And Brahma lives for 100 years. This is the 7th Manu, which is 71 Divya Yuga, and we are now currently on the 28th cycle which is at Kali Yuga. The next chart will also show. So you can go through this. This will be described further in the different cantos as well. But this is just to give you an overview that the Lord's universe is very structured, very systematic, broken down. It's timely. It's not ad hoc. There are laws, there are seasons, and everything is governed very, very nicely and systematically. So this is just to give you an example of, or chart shows you where we are. There are 71 Manvantars, and we are in the 28th Manvantar cycle. Previously, there were 6 different Manus. After this, there will be another 2, 4, 6, 7 Manus. And we are now currently on the 28th cycle, which is approximately 5,000 years in Kali Yuga. We are on the 28th Divya Yuga, 7th Manvantar. This is the duration of the ages: Kali Yuga, 432,000 years, Dwapara Yuga, Tetra Yuga, and Satya Yuga. And we are currently 5,000 years into Kali Yuga. Now, what's interesting here is to note in Sanskrit, Satya Yuga is generally the first Yuga. Then Dwapara Yuga, Dwapara means second, should be the second. Then Tetra Yuga, which is 3, third, and then Kali Yuga, which is 4th. But you notice that in this period or this cycle of Manvanta, we always say Satya Yuga, Tetra Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and then Kali Yuga. We don't say Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Tetra, and Kali. And the reason is because this cycle is very, very auspicious. The cycle means that on the 28th day of Brahma, we get Krishna appearing from the spiritual world directly, Swayam Bhagavan, and Lord Chaitanya, Swayam Bhagavan appearing. And because of that, the way creation indicates that this is a special period, the Tetra Yuga and Dwapara Yuga changes. And therefore, instead of the usual Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Tetra Yuga, Kali Yuga, we actually get Satya Yuga, Tetra Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. Just indicating that this cycle is a very, very auspicious, this period, this time is very, very auspicious, and especially because the Lord only appears on the 28th day of Brahma. Then this chart is giving the details of the different Manus that are there and the different names. We are currently ruled by Vaivasvata Manu, and his father's name is Vivashvan. The avatar that appeared during his time was Vamana, and the Indra, his name is Purandar. So these are the different, during these reigns of the Manus, these are the fathers. This is the avatar that generally appears, and this is the Indra's, this is Indra's names. Remember, Indra is a post. All the demigods, they have different posts, and they also have different names. So Indra has, the Indra post is managed by Purandar. Then here's another interesting piece of information. Vyasadeva is, Vyasadeva, there are 28 Divya Yugas which are listed here. And in each of these yugas, these are the different Vyasadevas that have managed to compile scriptures. So we are currently on the 28th, and therefore we got Krishna Dwapara Vyasa, who's currently managing the post of Vyasa. Next, after this Vyasa, when the Kali Yuga ends, next cycle in Satya Yuga, Ashwatthama, who's the son of Dronacharya, he's still currently existing. He's Jivanjiri is eternally there. And he's going to take the post of Vyasa. So Prabhupada writes, the Manus who are prominent within this universe are as follows: Yagna, as Swayambhuva Manu, Vibhu as Swarochiya Manu, Satyashena as Uttama Manu, Hari as Tamsa Manu, Vaikunta as Raivata Manu, Ajita as Chakshusha Manu, Vamana as Vaivashvata Manu, the present age is under Vaivashvata Manu, Sarvabhauma as Sarvani Manu, Rishabha as Daksha Sharvani Manu, Vikvakshena as Brahma Sarvani Manu, Dharma Setu as Dharma Sarvani Manu, Sudama as Rudra Sarvani Manu, Yogeshwara as Deva Sarvani Manu, and Brida Banu as Indra Sarvani Manu. These are the names of one set of 14 Manus covering 4,300,000,000 solar years described above. So if this is going beyond your head, don't worry. It just shows that the Bhagavatam is very detailed, very scientific, and at least we can appreciate Krishna is organized. So all the incarnations are revealed. Srila Prabhupada says, then they are the Yuga avatars or the incarnations of the millenniums. The Yugas are known as Satya Yuga, Tetra Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. The incarnations of each Yuga are of different colors. The colors are white, red, black, and yellow. In the Dwapara Yuga, Lord Krishna is black, in black color appeared, and in Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya in yellow color appeared. So all the incarnations of the Lord are mentioned in the revealed scriptures. There is no scope for an imposter to become an incarnation, for an incarnation must be mentioned in Shastras. An incarnation does not declare himself to be an incarnation of the Lord, but the great sages agree by the symptoms mentioned in the revealed scriptures. The features of the incarnations and particularly the type of mission which he has to execute are mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Apart from the direct incarnations, there are innumerable empowered incarnations. They are also mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Such incarnations are directly as well as indirectly empowered. When they are directly empowered, they are called incarnations. But when they are indirectly empowered, they are called vibhutis. Directly empowered incarnations are the Kumaras, Narada, Prithu, Shesha, and Anta, etc. As far as the vibhutis are concerned, they are very explicitly described in Bhagavad Gita in the Vibhu Yoga chapter. And for all these different types of incarnations, the fountainhead is Garbhadakasai Vishnu. So, direct and indirect empowered incarnations in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, for example, of the fish, I'm the shark. Of the mountains, I'm the Himalayas. So this is vibhuti, the potency, the power, not the vibhuti of ashes. And this is a real power, potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where he exhibits his potencies in creation. So Krishna manifests his potencies and powers in many facets of his creation. And all these different expansions, the fountainhead is Garbhadakasai Vishnu. So just a summary, you can use this and go through it already on your own. This is just a summary of all the points that we covered from these different verses about Karanadaksai Vishnu, who's the first Purusha avatar. Then a summary of Garbhadakasai Vishnu, who enters, Karanadaksai Vishnu then enters into the universe, and from him is lotus stem sprouts, and on top we find Lord Brahma is there. Within the lotus stem are all the different planetary systems, 14 planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. And then in each and every part of creation, in every organic and inorganic matter, the Garbhadakasai Vishnu expands as the super soul and permeates every part of the creation as super soul. And these are the three different Vishnus. And that brings us to the end of this wonderful introduction on the Purusha avatars, incarnations of the Lord. Next week, we're going to be covering verses 6 to 27, where we're going to cover all the incarnations of the Supreme Lord. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vantaraj Bhagavatam ki jai. anyone has any questions or comments. Sham had a question. When creation starts, then Sata Yuga commences. What happens to those living entities that are not in the mode of goodness, as at the end of the previous creation, an individual could be in other modes? Do they take birth in different universe that is already in existence and perhaps a different yuga, such as Kali Yuga in the universe, or all the universes created at the same time once the Lord awakes from his cosmic slumber? All the yugas in the universe take place exactly at the same time. So my understanding is, as it is described, that just like a clock, if you had to take the clock and all the time periods on the clock is existing currently on in somewhere on the planet. Right now it's 6 o'clock. Somewhere is 1 minute to 6, and somewhere is 1 minute past 6. And like that, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, the whole time, every part of every position on the clock is existing somewhere on the planet. Like that, all of the Lord's pastimes are existing somewhere in creation. And that would imply that the different creations or different universes are at a different cycle, different period, different cycle, so that it can facilitate, as you mentioned, the prisoners of different qualities can go at different times in the prison. So this is how the Lord would facilitate. How? I have no idea. It is achintya, inconceivable, because we can only think 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension. When you start going to 4 dimension and 5 dimension and 6 dimension, it is inconceivable. It's described that in the heavenly planets, there's 6 dimensions. What to talk about from the Lord's perspective? Inconceivable. There's one story given of a yogi. He went to Lord Brahma and he said, my dear Brahma, he performed great austerities and he asked Lord Brahma for a boon. Please give me everything that's in your head, your foreheads. And Brahma said, no, that is not possible. No, please give me everything in your foreheads so I can understand everything. Lord Brahma said, okay, since you insist, Tatastu, and his head exploded. Overload, too much information. So information overload. So it's inconceivable how the Lord manages these things. But yes, if somebody is at a certain mode and they drop or they go higher, then the Lord will arrange appropriately for them to continue on their journey. I hope that explained a little. Shambhu. Which incarnation was the Lord red and white? So red was Yagya, and white and red is also Vara. Vara incarnation is also red, and white. The Lord appeared as the horse incarnation, Hayagriva. So there are different, and we're going to be covering these different incarnations next week. We're going to be covering all the different incarnations, and all these will be touched on. Does Lord Ram appear in all the Treta Yugas or only once? Lord Ram appears in all the Tetra Yugas. Thank you, Prabhu, for the most transcendental class, relishing all the nectar. Thank you very much, Jagannath Priya Prabhu. Giridhar Prabhu says, Prabhu, we talked about focusing our mind on one thing at a time. How about if someone who does japa walk and does your rounds, is that allowed? So, Giriraj Prabhu, you need to come to our japa Ashraya course. We covered this in there. We don't recommend that you do your japa during japa walk, like going out, because you're obviously gazing. Ideally, what you want to do is finish your japa, sitting down, preferably in front of Tulsi, focusing, and then If you want to do additional rounds, then you can take your bead bag and chant and do additional rounds, no problem. If we see someone doing japa walk, we should code it that they're just doing additional rounds, because it can become inattentive. Just like Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada would chant throughout the day. He would chant, complete his rounds. Then throughout the day, even when Prabhupada was talking to people, having darshan, Prabhupada is chanting. So Prabhupada never stopped chanting in that sense. Right? That's the goal. So we want to do japa walk, which means when we're walking throughout the day, sitting, walking, sleeping, talking, not talking, we want to be chanting. That's the goal. But to at least come to that level, we should do our minimum prescribed rounds nicely as Prabhupada has prescribed. Shamananda Prabhu says the soul is about 8 inches, super soul is about 8 inches within us. Is it because he is spirit that we are unable to see him? Yes. Remember, Prabhupada already mentioned that we cannot see spirit. Why you can't see spirit? You don't have spiritual eyes. Your eyes are not tinged with the love, salve of love, pure devotion. If you have love, pure devotion, you will be able to see the super soul. You'll be able to see Krishna everywhere. Not only in your heart, everywhere you'll be able to see Krishna. But because that love is not there, now we are practicing to cultivate that love. So we cannot see Krishna right now. Now we are seeing Krishna, we can see Krishna through the deity form of the Lord. Krishna is very merciful, he's appearing as the Acha Vigraha. So now we can see Krishna in the deity form, as the deity form. That way we become purified. So by serving the deities, by practicing Krishna consciousness, we become more and more purified. When our senses become completely purified, Prabhupada said, we renovate our senses, then we can one day see Krishna and the super soul. Thank you, Sham. Mother Kishori Radha says, if we were in the spiritual world serving Lord Krishna, then at what stage did we fall from the spiritual world into the material creation? So this question was asked by Srila Prabhupada, and was asked to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada gave the answer that right now you will not be able to understand the answer to this question because of the current state or condition that we are in. The spiritual dimension or the spiritual world has different dimensions. And one thing is clear, that we left the spiritual dimension and now are in the material dimension. So therefore, instead of asking the question, at what stage did we leave or how did we leave? Rather, understand we at this stage, now let's get out. And when you get out, if you want the answer, then you can ask Krishna, how did it all happen? It will be irrelevant at that time, but you're most welcome to ask Krishna. And at that time, you'll be able to understand. Right now, it will be conflicting in your consciousness if we gave you the answer. Okay? Because people will start asking, if the spiritual is perfect, how can you fall down? All these other questions come. Prabhupada also gave the example of the tal fruit. There was a tal tree, and there were fruits on the tree. And there were few people, 2 people looking at the tal fruit. And the bird came and landed on the branch, and the tal fruit fell to the ground. So the 2 individuals started debating, how and why did the tal fruit fall? Was it gravity? Was it the force of the bird that landed on the branch? Was it that the fruit was ripe? And they went on debating. And Prabhupada says, irrelevant. The tal fruit is on the ground. Take it and eat it. Okay, so yes, this question, we can answer it. It's extensive, but the point is, if the house is burning, do not first ask, how did the fire start? If the house is burning, let's go out and extinguish the fire. Once we're out, then we can start asking that question. So the point is, let us practice Krishna consciousness. We are separated from the Lord. Let us practice nicely, go back, then this question will be relevant. Thank you, Madhavi, for your feedback. Lash, Hare Krishna, bro, thank you for the Krishna Katha. My query. There is an illustration with the three modes of material nature being three Devis pulling strings. Yes. And all the jivas are puppets on the string. Yes. How does the guna avatars engage, oversee, or work with these three Devis? So the three Devis are the three modes of material nature. Three Gonya Vishaya Veda. The material nature, Durga, is consisting of three modes. So it looks like there are three personalities, but it's one personality called Durga, and she is composed of the forces, you could say, of three modes of material nature. And these three forces, goodness, passion, ignorance, influences everyone within this creation. Each of these modes or energies or potencies or forces that influence according to our desires are managed by Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Vishnu. So the mode of ignorance is managed, the presiding deity of the mode of ignorance, the predominating deity is Lord Shiva. The mode of passion, predominant deity is Brahma, and the mode of goodness, predominant deity is Vishnu. So they are the personalities that predominate those modes. All the energies within the Lord's, in Lord's creation, they are personalities and they have different effects. So these modes have an effect on individuals. And this is how the modes are dominating according to our desire. So if we desire to, for example, be in a mode of ignorance, then as Bhagavad Gita describes, the mode of ignorance will have a different impact as compared to the mode of goodness or passion. Somebody in the mode of passion will have a lot of material desires. Somebody in the mode of ignorance will be very lazy. Okay? But that can change according to your desire and activities. So this is how the modes are influencing. Example, we have a light bulb. So the light bulb influences the environment by giving light. You can decide to switch it on or off. The fact that you in this material world, you are influenced by the modes according to your association with the different modes and the environment. Every aspect of creation is influenced by modes. This is extensively discussed in Bhagavad Gita. If you want, go to the chapter. To see in Bhagavad Gita, there's, I think, different chapters that cover the different modes. And you can go onto the channel and go through the Bhagavad Gita section of that chapter to get a little more understanding. So hope that clarified a little on that question. Okay, thank you very much for everyone's feedback. I'm glad that we were able to serve you in this way. Next week, we're going to be covering a very, very long series of verses, 6 to 27. And we're going to be covering all the different incarnations. So let's see how it goes. We may break it up in parts, but once I start to prepare, then we'll see how we'll present. That's the series of these verses, which are going to be covering all the different incarnations. Yeah, 22 different incarnations that we're going to be covering. Thank you very much. Vantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande, Hari Hari.